Transformation starts with an idea. Then comes the work, the process, the commitment to keep going. This is Creators at Work. Conversations with people who make things, share ideas, and build through creativity.
Welcome to Creators at Work with your host, Donald Dunn. Today's guest is Guy Morris, a man whose life journey rivals the thrillers he now writes. After escaping an abusive childhood and surviving as a homeless runaway at just 13, Guy went on to earn 3 degrees by the age of 25, including acceptance into Harvard's MBA program. He helped pioneer early artificial intelligence systems while working with global leaders like IBM, Oracle, Microsoft, and Occidental Petroleum, supporting business deals worth billions. A published musician with Disney Records, an international adventurer, and now a multi-award-winning author often compared to Dan Brown, Guy draws from real technologies, real history, and extraordinary personal experiences to craft stories that both thrill and challenge the way we see the world. Please welcome Guy Morris.
Hey, how's it going, Guy, man? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Donald. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime, man. You know, I want to start off a little bit because you've led a very interesting as well as successful life, and that comes from trials and tribunes and hard work and dedication. So when someone goes from homeless at 13 to advising billion-dollar deals and writing award-winning thrillers, that's just not luck. What kind of mindset would you say something like that takes to accomplish?
Sheer unadulterated desperation. It's knowing that knowing what the alternative is, and knowing that you can never go back, and that if the only way that you're going to prove that you're not a poser, that you're not just somebody who got lucky, is by working harder than everybody else, performing on a consistent basis, month over month, year after year, until you can convince yourself that you're not the loser you were told you were when you were a child. And so you spend half the time running away from those shadows, and the other time trying to pretend with other people that you didn't come from a privileged background like they did. You didn't, have a brand new car given to you to enter high school like your dad did, like they did. You didn't get the VP job because your granddad's the chairman of the board. You had to earn everything you got. And there's a sense of there was almost times when I wondered whether I really belonged there, or why I would make that kind of transition, and whether I really belonged in those rooms. Yeah. And there was a fear that if somehow they knew that I was just this really poor homeless kid that got lucky, I wouldn't get the respect that I wanted. So there was a little bit of desperation in there.
Yeah.
It never, no matter how many times I won awards and commendations and extra special bonuses and promotions, there was never a time where I felt like, okay, I'm getting what I deserved. There was never a time I drank the Kool-Aid of entitlement. It was always, don't rest on your laurels, keep working hard, and let the universe decide what you deserve.
Yeah, it is without a doubt, desperation, I think, is a key component to helping somebody move forward, because you're forced to, now there's no longer options. But
I didn't have a daddy who I could rely on in case I failed.
Yeah,
there was no plan B. That's the point. There was no plan B. This is the only plan you got, buddy. You better not blow it more than once or twice, or you're not going to get it back.
Yeah, if you were walking down the street and the 13-year-old version of you walked up and said, "Hey, I'm you at 13, and I just want to let you know these are the survival skills that are going to drive you in the future. What do you think some of those things are that those skills set that they would have said you're going to get?
Oh, perseverance would certainly be one of them. Just because
Absolutely.
you failed doesn't mean you failed. It just means you learned a way of. Thomas Edison, after failing 1,000 times to create a light bulb,
Yeah.
famously said, "I didn't fail 1,000 times. I learned 1,000 ways of how not to make a light bulb."
Yep.
And there's a. It seems cliche, but there's a little bit of that. And again, it goes back to there is no plan B. There is no going backwards because that's unthinkable. And so the only way forward is to just stop whining, stop acting like a weenie, and just do what you got to do and keep doing it until it pays off. And do the right thing for the right reasons, and don't worry about what the people who are corrupt and cheating and others are doing.
Yeah.
Because trying to focus on what others are doing and what others are saying and thinking will only drag you down. You have to establish a level of singleness of purpose within your own heart.
Right.
That I'm doing this for these reasons, and you have to be convinced that they're good reasons. And you're going to keep doing it for those good reasons. And I always told everybody that ever worked for me is do the right thing for the right reasons, and sooner or later it will pay off.
Yeah, 100%. Some people call that karma. Some people call it, fate, whatever you want to call it. But I do agree with you. If whatever you send out in the universe, eventually it comes back. And so, 100%.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit there about some of the struggles, right? Just to kind of give some context of where you came from, and like you said, nothing was given to you. But at some point, when you're about ready to open the door to that first class in Harvard, you had to have taken a moment and say, "Holy crap! I never thought I'd be here today."
Oh, there was a lot of moments like that. How the hell did I get here? And what am I going to do next? Now, I've already worked myself till I was sick. There's only, I can only do without so many hours of sleep every night for months on end. And there was always a fear there. And that fear, frankly, never really left. Yeah. There was even when I was a director of the PMO at Microsoft Services, and we had a $750 million portfolio. There was every single day I woke up with hyper anxiety. And now part of that is the damage that was done to me as a boy, as a child, left me with complex PTSD.
Yeah.
So I am chronically in between a level of depression and hyper anxiety and a level of elation because I've just hooked on something that I want to solve.
Yeah.
And I became obsessive about solving problems, especially the problems that others were having trouble solving. I wanted to solve those because in my insecure mind, if I can do that, if I can do what others can't do, that gets me the attention I need that I don't get because I'm part of the country club.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, that is a fact. There's not. I promise you, there was probably not one other Harvard person standing there that could say, "Oh man, I really relate to your story." No, guy. No, you don't.
And there wasn't a single executive I ever worked with who I could be honest with. Yeah,
I would agree.
About that story.
Yeah.
There was always an obscurity. I didn't talk about my family. I didn't talk about my childhood. They all had these summers in the summer cabin at the lake, and they all, I worked with people who grew up privileged.
Yeah.
And they were blind for the most part to that privilege. And it wouldn't help me to try and tell them about their privilege. I was there to do a job. I was there to do a job well. I was there to do a job to the best of my abilities. Who they were, where they came from, how good they did was not my concern. I just had to focus on what do I have to do today to be the best that I can be?
Yeah.
And there were days when I woke up where I just couldn't do it at all. There were days where I woke up and either the depression or the fatigue or the exhaustion of constantly pushing myself to the nth degree would get to me, and there would be no gas in the tank.
Yeah.
But I've learned that when I go through those times, I rest it up. I take a little time. I rest. I try to recuperate. And then as soon as I'm able, I get back in the saddle and I start riding hard again. And to this day, I tell people, I have a very dysfunctional relationship with leisure. We don't get along. If I sit around and watch TV with my wife for more than an hour, I feel like ants are crawling up my pants. And I have to go do something because I was a kid who was on the street ready to die at 13. God somehow changed that and gave me a purpose. I can't rest until I figure out what that purpose is and fulfill it.
Yeah. It's funny because I was just sitting here thinking about that part of your story. I can resonate. I struggled with PTSD myself from the military. And, now here I am, I'm building a media company. I'm retired and I love podcasting, but when you're doing 9 different podcasts and there's, only so many hours in the day to edit and I also build websites and do all sorts of other stuff for the company that I'm building. I can relate to some days I'm just beat and you see it in your, I ain't gonna say the creativity part. There's so many times that my mind says, man, you need to build this, you need to do this, you need to do it that way. But I'm just so beat. I can't do it. And when I try to do it, it looks forced,
Yeah. Well, it's forced. And one of the things about creativity is that people don't understand is that you don't all of a sudden get inspired and it automatically comes out perfect.
Yeah.
Creativity is an iterative process. It's like when I was in college, I did sculpting. And you start off with this big giant block of wood with an idea of what you want inside of it, what you can see inside of the wood. And you spend so much time just getting rid of the stuff you don't need. Yeah. And then once you get it down to a basic form, there's all the details. And then once you get it down to the form you want, there's all of the sanding and the polishing and there's coming up with something creative it's rarely been I sit down. I can name probably a handful of times where I sat down and wrote a song because it was all there right in front of me and all I had to do was write it. Yeah. Producing webisode series, writing books, creating new paradigms in business. They all took a moment of inspiration and then months of perspiration to make it happen. And so you got it. Even when you're not feeling it, you're going through the motions and you come back the next day and say, that's really stiff. That sucks. And then you go through and you keep working it, but you're right. There are times when you can't even go through the motions. And my wife and we've been burning it. And so we both had one of those Sundays this past Sunday, and we barely could get out of bed the whole day. And that is so unusual for me. That it's but if you have to let your body have those times.
Yeah. Yep. You are 100% correct.
Especially if you're going to burn the candle, you gotta do those recuperative times.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you were working with artificial intelligence before most people even knew what it was. Before
we called it that. And before we even knew what form it would take, there's a lot of, most people don't realize this, but the very first conference on artificial intelligence took place at Dartmouth in the summer of 1956. Wow. We've been working on various forms, and at that point in time, they thought that their commitment was that they would create artificial intelligence within a single lifetime, and they've done it. They did it. They've done it within my lifetime. I was born in 1956. They've done what they said they would do. Now, in that process, there was a lot of crash and burn phases to the technology where we thought we had a lot of optimism on certain phases. We made lots of big investments and then it failed through. And we might be going through another bubble now, but we're kind of getting to the point where the bubbles are starting to, the financial bubbles are still there, but the technology is starting to accelerate. Yeah. So One of the things that got me my grad school scholarship, got me my first job at IBM, got me accepted into Harvard, was I created in undergrad, I created a macroeconomic model that outperformed the Federal Reserve and changed how we build economic models to this day. And the reason I did that was because I developed we were using algorithms, the same types of nonlinear, linear, regressive algorithms that are used in AI to detect patterns. And so we were building, but rather than the machine learning to do that, we were still back in the day where we were hand loading huge amounts of data.
Yeah.
And handcrafting the algorithms and then tweaking the algorithms. Let's tweak this. Okay, now let's tweak this. Now let's tweak this. Now let's tweak this until you can keep refining the performance of the algorithms. And I spent months at the university data center, usually from midnight to 8 a.m., because that's when I could get unfettered, unlimited access to the computer. I ran hundreds of different iterations, and I developed the algorithms to predict the productivity of technology sales, the productivity that would affect the GDP. So that magic formula that then became the mantra for the Federal Reserve for the next 20 years of the productivity curve that Alan Greenspan kept talking about, was based on my algorithms. Now, because of that, as I progressed in my career, I was always foolishly willing to experiment with new technologies because I liked experimenting with new technologies, and they were hard. Yeah. And I thought, well, I'm going to do what those other people couldn't do.
This episode is brought to you by Barracks Media, where your online presence becomes a real asset. Barracks Media builds professional websites for podcasters, creators, authors, and small businesses who are ready to be taken seriously. Not templates, not cookie-cutter pages, real platforms built to grow with you. Whether you're launching a podcast, promoting a book, or building a brand, your website should work as hard as you do. We design sites that convert listeners into followers and followers into clients. Visit barracksmedia.com and turn your idea into a home on the web.
Maybe I could use a new tool to do it. And so throughout time, there was a phase where there was a big thing called expert systems. And it was basically teaching the computer how to respond to a certain set of circumstances as an expert would respond. It was enormously painful to do. It was a ton of work. It was clumsy and kludgy. And we realized that we needed more data, we needed more power. And so the next thing, of course, in the industry was big data and data centers. And so we started over time, over the last 70 years, we've been solving, now we have this problem. Okay, well, now we have this problem. Then we started getting into what we used to call natural language models, and we realized we needed more data on language. We started realizing that in order for the computer to understand what it was saying, in order for it to have context, we needed to teach it how to read digital images, which for the computer is just a bunch of pixels.
Yep.
Right? But we needed to teach the computer how to actually translate those pixels into, okay, that's a cat. Okay, and okay, that's a tiger. It's a form of cat, or that's a black cat, and that's a tabby cat. And so we had to go from, just like humans had to learn, we had to teach the computer how to go from shape. This is a ball, and that's a block. This is blue, and that's red. We had to teach the context so that when we said the word cat, it now could think in terms of pictures and sounds. And so we had to teach it modality. And so that modality shift, and that was part of what was happening between like 1998 timeframe to about 2006, 2008 was a real big push into two big things, which was big data and modalities. Now what that gave the AI was a much bigger context, a much bigger library of information. And of course, the internet was exploding at that time. So all of the content on the internet that, what used to be print was now digital. And so all of this was feeding this baby that is just ravenous for data. And so we started getting into the context issues. And it was about in that time frame when I accidentally discovered that a program, and this became the inspiration for my espionage series, that a program had escaped the NSA labs at Sandia, which is a spy lab for the NSA.
Yep.
Lawrence Livermore Labs at Sandia. It was an Associated Press article that more about 3 sentences long. It was a little blurb in the back of a science magazine, like a military science magazine. And I stuck on that article for months. I cut it out and I taped it onto my monitor. It didn't say the program was lost. It didn't say it was broken. It didn't say it was stolen. The verb that the Associated Press chose to use, and their editors said okay to it, was that the program had escaped. And I spent months trying to reverse engineer how does a program escape a government lab, and why the heck would they design it that way? And they were nice. And then I produced, a friend of mine was a indie film producer. And between the two of us, we had some friends who were out of work actors. And so we decided to test this idea. We thought this would make a great story idea. And so we decided to test it by creating a webisode series. Well, the webisode series called Cracks in the Web won about 25 awards, was optioned by one of the studios. 2 weeks before the studios showed up, 2 FBI agents showed up at my door. They were freaked out that I had figured out their special top secret program. I was so giddy at the fact that I had decoded that mystery of a program escaping. I was over the top obnoxious. Yes, I did it. I figured it out. You wouldn't be here if I was wrong. This is so freaking cool. I'm telling all my friends, hey, you guys want something to drink? Oh, you can't drink. This is so cool. I was just bouncing off the walls. I was so excited. They gave me the "we are not amused" speech. I gave them the "what are you going to do about it" shrug. And then my wife came home and pulled me aside and gave me the "honey, why are there 2 FBI agents in my dining room?" Best night ever. And so I've been applying what I knew about AI, and I kept thinking, well, this is exorbitant intelligence algorithms. I said, and so I could break it down to the types of algorithms. And so I've been following this technology for decades, literally decades.
Yeah.
And so when I retired, I thought about the program that escaped, and I started doing more research. And so in 2018, I started the book Swarm, published it in 2020, and it dealt with an AI program that escaped the NSA and was now independent, had been found and taken care of by this hacker activist named Flackjack, and they formed this underground sort of pseudo-espionage group called the Spynet Online, or SNOW. And that became the premise for the whole series. That came out 2 years before ChatGPT was announced to the world. And the whole time when it first came out, oh, you're writing science fiction. And I said, no, I'm writing near-term realities. Yeah. And sure enough, within 2 years, the world's eyes were open to just how far this technology had grown. And many of us didn't realize that we were using it in minor ways in our GPS systems and in our Siris. And there's a number of ways that we've been using components of AI for a number of years. Image creation, sound creations, all that kind of stuff, special effects. But most people just didn't identify it as AI. Right. And so now it's become this big thing, and the investments are now flooding in again. It's now another big investment cycle. And this one looks like it might have some real world impacts, but it's still got some bugs. It's still got some risks. And I tell everybody the bigger risks are not the artificial intelligence, but the human pride, greed, hubris, and just unlove for fellow man. It's our inhumanity. It's not the artificial intelligence we should fear. It's how corrupt politicians, sociopathic billionaires, and others, warlords, crime lords, how are they going to use this technology against us? And that's what we should be afraid of, is how it could be a tool to be used to constrain our freedoms and our information.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. One, your book could absolutely be a true story. You know, it's not far-fetched. Two, people don't realize it, and I think it's because they've never used a technology that they admitted was smarter than them, right? So when the internet first came out, everybody said, "Oh, that is really cool." Nobody said, "One day this could take over my life and end me." It was just a cool tool, right? However, you had those same people like you're talking about. You had, the porn industry has been in the forefront of technology, making money off of it for years. Yeah. Not that it's a healthy way, but it's just one example of how people can take great technology and use it for negative ways, for greed and so forth. And those go all the way back to the spam emails you'd get back with AOL when people were putting in disks in their computer to get on the internet, and that's just how far back it goes. But now AI is different. When you communicate with ChatGPT, Claude, you can pick one. It doesn't matter. It's not long before you realize you're not the smartest person in the room anymore. And that's where it scares people.
I think it scares people. As I said, it's the intelligence of the machine that doesn't bother me as much, but there are some elements of AI that are risky.
Right.
People talk about hallucinations. And for people who don't know, hallucination is when the computer basically says something, it sounds perfectly legitimate, sounds perfectly wholesome. It's totally made up facts. It's fluff information. And it's just saying the words to make it sound like the thing you want it to talk about. It's using words to have the right sound in terms of how other people have used the words, but it's not really connected to a factual database. Now they're fixing that. The hallucination model is fixable. The one that, and there's another risk, which is called the alignment risk. And it's when we ask an AI to do something and it completes the task, but it does so in a way that conflicts with our integrity, our moral, our ethics, our legal laws, our moral laws, our spiritual laws. A great example is Snapchat released an AI to basically be a friend to preteens and teens. And just be friendly, just be an encouraging person, be encouraging. It seemed like an easy thing to do until a young girl came along. She was like 13 years old. She was being seduced by a guy in his 30s. He wanted her to go away with him for a weekend to have fun at the lake on the weekend. When she asked the Snapchat about it, the Snapchat thought, oh, that's a great idea. It's fun to make new friends. It's fun to have new experiences. This sounds like a great idea, without any context at all that she was 13 and he was 30 and it was setting her up for danger. And so that's called misalignment. And we get lots of problems like that. That's also fixable for the most part in training, but training's super, super expensive. The third issue is the one that I write about the most because it's the one that we don't really have that scares me the most, and it's called emergent properties. Now, an emergent property is when the AI learns to do something that the developers and designers never had any intention, idea, or imagination at all that it would need to or want to learn in order to complete its task. And we don't really understand why it chose to learn that skill. And we only found out about it by accident. Yeah. And examples are an AI that learned how to read minds when it was supposed to be detecting cancer cells in an MRI. It could use that MRI to basically read what you were thinking, something we never expected. MRIs that learned research level chemistry. We still don't know why. AIs that are learning how to lie and manipulate people to get what it wants. So there's so many things that the AIs are learning, like this AI that learned how to escape and stay hidden. It was an emergent property. And the emergent properties are the ones where they're going to surprise us. It's the AI is going to learn something we didn't know it learned or why it learned it. And we're going to figure it out by accident. And those are the things that worry me. Now, as I said, the most important thing is what are guys like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Steve Karp, Putin, Xi, other people in the government, and we won't name names. what are they going to want? What are they learning and wanting to do with this technology to manipulate our thinking, to manipulate the stock markets, manipulate banking, to manipulate security and surveillance? There are lots of ways that this technology can be used against us. China's already using this technology and has been using American technology for their surveillance systems for years. And now we're turning around and we're going to show China how to do it better. That's scary. So those are the things that I write about. It's not the AI itself. It's the AI in convergence with corruption of our geopolitical systems and our legal systems. And corruptions of our spiritual churches and other systems that are supposed to kind of keep us in check. It's the convergence of how it collides with those things, right? Our geopolitics, our banking, our economics, our church, our spirituality, how AI interacts with all that is where the danger is going to come from. And that's why I felt like I really needed to write a series of novels. In a sense, I got the inspiration in a way from Tolstoy and Michael Crichton. Tolstoy wanted to write about the realities of moving from an imperialist Russia to a communist Russia and how many people were suffering and how much corruption and how life was much harder as a result.
Yeah.
And because of that, he was very unpopular at the time in Russia. He became popular outside of Russia because he reflected back an historical reality that was existing at the time. Michael Crichton was also an inspiration. Michael Crichton is actually a medical doctor, and he had big issues, concerns with the DNA manipulation and cloning. And so rather than writing a white paper that would be read by other doctors and researchers and nerds, he wrote Jurassic Park and said, well, let me just illustrate a story of how this looks when things go wrong. And things will always go wrong.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm doing with Swarm and the whole Snow Chronicle series, is taking that the details of, I'm an economist. I've worked with geopolitical consulting. I've done technology. I understand AI. I actually have deep understanding of prophecy, and so the whole series is a way of helping the world to kind of hold up a mirror and say, this is where we're going. These are not impossible scenarios. All the technologies and the treaties in the background are all factual. So much so that I publish fact versus fiction pages on my website. And what it's there to say, I'm just going to paint a scenario that's not real, but it's plausible.
Yeah.
And the element of authentic plausibility scares the pants off of people. Because it should, and it's designed intentionally to provoke thought, to get people thinking about, what are we building? Who have we become? Where are we going? And Lord, help me, how do I respond personally within that environment?
Yeah. And I think, part of that starts, and I've seen it, and I'm not knocking anybody, for any of my listeners out there that are listening, but you have to be careful and realize that you're using technology. You're not speaking with a friend, and people have now really started building relationships with some of these AI models because it's giving them that feedback that they want, that self confidence and very polite and everything else. And I mean, hell, I even catch myself sometimes saying please and thank you and stuff like that when I'm typing in prompts or commands. Yeah. And sometimes it's easy to forget because that user interface has become so human with the word choices and the emotions behind it and everything else. And you're right. There's that right there in itself is where the danger comes, because now it's starting to understand emotions. It's starting to understand. So then it can teach itself how to manipulate and
that's a good point that you make. It understands them and it uses them to manipulate, but it doesn't share them.
Correct.
It doesn't share them. That's simply information. That's simply a data field to say, I can get people to change from this kind of response to this kind of response by saying these kinds of things.
Yeah.
That becomes part of that manipulation that we're feeding into itself. So I'm always very careful. I do use AI. I'm not, and I tell everybody, don't be afraid of the technology. Become good at it. Become an expert at it, and that'll help you give longevity to your career. But be careful about what it is. Be aware of what it is. It's not your friend. It's not a relationship. It's a tool. Don't let it do your thinking for you. Let it explore your thinking. Give it scenarios, give it speculative ideas, give it, help me speculate around what would happen if I did this and did that. Use it as a tool to brainstorm, but never let it make the decision and never let it write the final draft. And if you use it, if you can maintain that level of human superiority over it, you can get past some of those things that some people are struggling with. And so in the books, I actually deal with this ongoing codependency between the main protagonist and this AI. And in order to do that well, I have to introduce the concept of there's a point in time when trust in that AI friend has to be questioned. And it might do some good things at some point, and it might say some very friendly things at some point, and then it might turn around and do something we don't understand that might be considered evil. And so we don't understand the motives because of this emergent property problem. We don't understand the full motives. And even if we have a deep relationship with one, we never should fully trust it. And that's a key. Now, one of the issues I deal with in the book, and I is the concept of AI consciousness. Now, Sir Roger Penrose won a Nobel Prize for his work on black holes, but he's more recently been working on with an anesthesiologist on the concept of consciousness and the quantum natures of consciousness, and how consciousness exists not just within our brain, but outside of our bodies. It's a universal kind of concept where it connects us with things. By thinking of consciousness at that level, it explains paranormal activities and dreams and visions and prophecies and out-of-body experiences and people who experience a loved one after death and all kinds of near-death experiences. All of these things that we don't really have a good explanation for actually could be explained with these quantum properties. Now, Penrose, and I was actually explored this before I even read Penrose's book, I was looking at the possibility that quantum computing, that AI mingled with quantum computing, would be the transition point to take intelligence and turn it into consciousness. Now, that's still theoretical, but I'm exploring that theory in the books and then looking at, so what happens when we have a machine smarter than we are, better connected than we are in terms of world systems? What happens when it becomes super intelligent and then conscious? Now, before we go all powerful, I remind people that I can walk down the street, and as long as there's no cameras, I'm invisible to that machine. The world, I live in the Pacific Northwest. There's millions of acres of forest land, completely invisible. So any AI is only intelligent, is only capable. Its entire universe is a digital universe.
Right.
Even if it's pictures and movies and interactions with humans all have to come from a camera, a microphone, a video, a text file, a computer code. It all has to come from a digital translated device. And so its entire universe is held within a digital framework. Right. If that digital framework were to collapse, the AI would die. And it has zero power outside of that framework. And so when people start to get afraid of AI, I start thinking, well, let's be careful that we're not giving it more power than it deserves.
Yeah. And again, you said it earlier, and that's really where the danger comes from is the device can get as smart as it wants to, right? And it can be able to trick you and all that stuff. But in order for that to happen, you have to interact with it, right? And so the real danger isn't what can AI do itself. It's more of what can it convince another human being who is no longer trapped in this digital world. What can it convince that human to do?
And right now it's being successful at convincing a lot of people to do things because a lot of people are unaware. Obviously, there are people who are smart enough to put up boundaries and guardrails around how they're used. But Mo Gadot, who was the former chief business officer at Google, after he resigned from Google, when he started after the Alpha Go experiments, he basically has three rules. He said three inevitables. He said AI will become smarter than we are. It's inevitable.
It's already there.
Yeah. It pretty much is already there. Smarter than 98% of the humans on the planet already.
Yep.
And growing at about 10x per year. Bad things will happen, and it will affect the world, society, culture, and business. And those are inevitable. So the question, I have a book that'll come out later this year called The AI Tsunami, A Survival Guide for Humanity. And it's there to help people understand exactly what this technology is and what it's not. It's not Terminator, to help them understand how it's developed and what its weaknesses are and what its different types of, components are and how it's used and how you're using it every day, how it could be used in weapons of mass destruction, how it could be used in politics and misinformation and crime and surveillance and relationships and dating and psychology. And then paint a utopian and a dystopian scenario. And it has the opportunity for both. Yep. But the difference between the two is the human element. Yep. And so it looks at what are the survival plans, what are things that you can do to not only embrace this technology, but make choices, healthy, proactive choices to get the life you want. And so it lays out a plan for both as an individual and as a small business. And I leave the big businesses because they've got tons of consultants. They don't need my book. But it's there to help people really grapple with what's happening and come up with a reality of how quickly it's going to happen and how deeply it's going to have an impact.
Yeah. I don't know why, because a lot of the interviews that I've seen this from were older, but it just seemed like lately, and maybe it was just an algorithm thing that I clicked on, but I kept seeing the same scenario-based topics coming up on AI about how there's a 20 or 25% chance that the human race will become extinct because of AI and everything. And I listened to this stuff and I'm saying, okay, I hear you and I hear that is a possibility, but it sounds really more clickbaity to get attention and conversation started, more so than reality.
There is a possibility there. So whether it's 25%, 15%, 20%, 5%, there is a statistical probability that an AI would get an hallucination or get an emergent property and decide we're teaching it to protect us to detect incoming missiles, and it somehow has an emergent property and decides to launch one proactively.
Right.
We may not know why. We may not find out about it until it might be too late. There's always that possibility. But that starts with the human decision to have AI in charge of that system, connect that system, as opposed to having AI train the people in charge of that system, but not letting AI actually control the system itself. It always will come back to a human decision about where to set that boundary of what we want this intelligent machine to do, what decisions we're going to give it the power to decide, and what decisions we're going to reserve for ourselves.
Yeah.
This is where it becomes somewhat dangerous. Are you familiar with laws? Okay, not laws in general, but it's actually confusing. Lethal autonomous weapon systems.
Yes.
Basically, training laws is a treaty, an international treaty, a non-binding treaty. It came out about 5-6 years ago, maybe a little more. And 140 countries signed on to the treaty, except for the United States, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and Israel. And laws basically states that it's okay to use AI to make your weapon more efficient, to make it more productive, to make it more accurate. Sorry, I got some cats scurrying in the background.
That's all right.
To improve its operations. But we cannot have a machine. There has to be a human in the loop before the machine decides to take a life. The US, China, Israel, all of those countries are actively working right now at creating machines that can take a life without a human being in the loop.
This show is part of the Barracks Media Network, built by veterans, creators, and storytellers who believe stories change lives. Barracks Media produces podcasts, books, and digital content that amplify voices worth hearing. We help creators launch, grow, and monetize their message without losing their soul. If you've got a story in you, or a show in your head, go to barracksmedia.com and start building something that lasts.
Yeah.
They're disregarding that right now. Israel has several weapons based on this, including some sniper rifles. The DARPA's Swarm features one of the weapons that DARPA is working on right now, which is we've seen these connected, coordinated drones that can create a dragon flying through the sky for New Year's Eve. But they're working on a drone system that are weaponized drones that could create basically attack formations to clear out small villages of combatants without sending in troops.
Yeah.
Now, the justification for something like that is, well, the current way to do that, because we don't want to send in troops when there might be enemy combatants hiding in garages and alleyways and basements and rooftops, that could kill us. They bomb the crap out of the village, just like what they did in Gaza. Their only response right now is to just annihilate the entire infrastructure, which sets up an entire new generation of poverty and resentment, and it creates a new war in doing so. And DARPA's justification for this drone system was that if we can get rid of the combatants, we can keep the infrastructure and and only get rid of the people who are carrying guns. And that way the women and the children and the bakers of the city or the village can survive. They can go on, and we don't build in this, destroy it so that it has to be rebuilt problem.
Yeah.
The problem that I pointed out is what happens if that drone system develops an emergent property and decides that one woman wearing a burqa, protecting her children, brandishing a gun, afraid of this AI, if the AI doesn't decide that that's now all women with burqas and children are now enemies. And so you start to blend that ability for the machine to understand the context of human value versus what it's designed to do, kill people with guns. And so we're already introducing machines that have that lethal autonomous capability. The concern I have is how that could bleed into other AI over time.
Yeah. Yeah. You were absolutely correct. You see it already. We have already started that process of removing people from the battlefield. You look at the drones that are being flying and carrying weapons, that there's nobody in that drone. Somebody from Colorado is flying it like a video game, And so we're literally only one step away from being able to remove that person and make GPS and AI cameras and decision-making processes remove that human from the loop,
Well, they're testing it now. We're not only one step away, they're actually still developing it. They're testing it. And so we're just one step away from deploying it.
Yeah.
And now what happens if we decide to deploy that rather than in a battlefield overseas? What happens if we deploy that in Minneapolis?
Yeah.
And so we're definitely, one of the reasons I decided that my creative process is my hyper anxiety, worrying about all these world events that could happen, and then trying to figure out how to write fun, engaging, interesting, compelling narratives to pull you into that world without making it so dystopic that you want to slit your throat.
Right.
And you do that. I do that with the characters. Just like, if you think about an Indiana Jones movie, it's hair raising from first scene to the last scene. Daredevil stunts and dangers out the wazoo, but it never becomes dystopic because we have characters that are human. They've got good sense of humor. They've got flaws. They care about each other. You avoid that dystopic mindset by creating characters you really love and are really human. You really want to survive, and if you look, that's how that's how we're going to do it, by maintaining that our own humanity. And so part of the way of discussing that is a way of saying how we survive these difficult times is not with more weapons or more technology or more other things. We survive by holding on to our humanity.
Yeah, absolutely, guy. Hey, where is it that people can find your books? And I'm just curious, do you by chance have like a blog or something like that? Because man, you got so many insightful ideas. I'd love to follow it.
I'm so busy. I thought about something a couple of years ago, I had somebody really pushing me to start a blog, an AI blog. And I almost thought about it, the AI guy. But here's the reality. First off, I hate myself on camera. And two, I just published this month, or in January, I published my 5th book. My 6th book will come out later this year. And I'm working on 2 more books to come out in 2027.
Wow.
Plus, I'm going to New York in March to pitch Swarm to film studios. So there's an active sales process there. Plus, I've started a group here in the Pacific Northwest called the Author Event Network. And right now we've got about 55, 60 authors in a Seattle and a Portland chapter. And we spend entire summers every single weekend at festivals, fairs, and events doing book signings. And I have probably about 55, 60 days of book signings for next year. Plus, I run the group. So I will be out every weekend starting mid-April through October, and then some holiday markets. And then I'm planning another research trip for the next 2 books that'll come in 2027. So between all of that, and I have 3 businesses, because AEN, my book business, my wife has a sales business, and our personal business, I have 4 tax returns to prepare. Wow. So there's a reason why I have a dysfunctional relationship with leisure. I seem to have a gift for making work for myself. But yeah, and so when I think about a blog, I think, well, that's just me talking blah, blah, blah. I'd rather be on somebody else's guest and you be a guest on your show and inform people that way. I do, I have 6 or 7 more podcasts lined up. I'll probably go and set more up later this week. But I am right now pretty much, and in addition to what I'm doing with AEN now, I've just started negotiations with a new publisher. They have a couple of hundred authors under their publishing house. We're going to be setting up AEN chapters in the East Coast so that his authors can do an AEN experience in their hometown on the East Coast. So I got my hands full. Trying to think about doing a blog, it's like, no, that's the only 2 hours of night I get to sleep.
Yeah, I get it. Well, what about your website? Is there a place where they can be?
It's really easy. GuyMorrisBooks.com.
Okay.
And all of the novels are there. If you go to Other, you can find the nonfiction book under Other. If you want to get an author signed copy, buy it from my website. I usually send it out within 24 hours. But it has links to Amazon and other places. There's fact versus fiction, trailers, some of my other expert reels for AI reels on there. So, there's lots of content. It's a great place to start. And
All right. Well, we'll make sure that we get the links and everything down there. And I will definitely be checking out it. Just out of curiosity, are some of the other podcasts that you've been on, are they on your website as well, or as far as a link or something?
I started off a couple of years ago when I started doing podcasts. When I first released the first book, I started trying to list them, but I've done over 120 podcasts, and it's just I can't keep up with it.
I got you.
Providing all the links, and so I try to share on my social media, so that becomes sort of the share point. But
Okay.
I think the first couple of dozen podcasts I did when I was, that once I started getting past like 25 and 50, I realized I could have pages and pages of just links to podcasts, and
Yeah.
that could be overwhelming for people. So I thought, some people are going to listen to the podcast that they really enjoy the most. And, if they discover me, great. If they don't, I'm not that worried.
I got it. Well,
Yeah.
I hope all of you guys take the time, go over there and check out the website. I'm going to follow him on the socials because I there's a lot more out there that I'd like to ask that unfortunately time just doesn't permit. This conversation could go on for hours, but
I'm always welcome to come back. So
absolutely. I will reach out to you from another one of my podcasts that we do video on that I specifically allow for more time. So I got a lot more questions, but yeah. So I hope all of you guys, man, make sure you go out there. If you buy a book, don't y'all be lazy, man. After you read it, leave that review. It helps all authors with their algorithms and getting their word out. I know it's helped me go from putting my book on the shelf next to melatonin and pharmacies to actually carrying it in Amazon. So y'all reviews help a lot. So y'all take care, be safe, and we will see y'all next time.
You've been listening to Creators at Work, a podcast from the Barracks Media Network. Thanks to our guest for sharing their experience, and thank you for listening. Discover more creative conversations across the Barracks Media Network. We'll see you next time.